19-year-old guilty of manslaughter. The streets of London for years now have been considered a hotspot for senseless killings amongst youth in the area, and while cries have rung on end, it seems only little effort has been employed to combat the menace. In this case, a 15-year-old was stabbed multiple times, and a suspect has been caught and charged with manslaughter at the yet tender age of 19. This is Disturbed World. Subscribe and ring the notifications bell. Charged with manslaughter, O'Neill Cameron was found guilty following a trial at the Old Bailey for stabbing a 15-year-old, Romario Opia, in the chest on the 25th of January last year. The case of deaths all over London has seriously been associated with altercations between gangs, and this case was no different, as Romario died after an altercation between two rival gangs, Holland Walk, Islington. When he was apprehended, Cameron admitted to stabbing the 15-year-old, but pleaded not guilty with claims that he only acted in self-defense. Cameron was caught with another 17-year-old who was present at the crime scene and who pled guilty to the possession of an offensive weapon. When a police detective commented on the case, he notably mentioned, "There are no winners in the case. It was not a sophisticated killing, it was senseless. Romario's family are coping with unimaginable grief after the tragic loss of a loved one so early in life, and I pay tribute to their bravery." The police identified the assailant after discovering a slider-style flip-flop worn by Cameron during the incident in a washing machine at his home. Also, a large knife coated with his DNA was found at the back of a cupboard during the same search. Mr. Jones, the police detective, added that it isn't just the victim's family who are dealing with the loss, but also O'Neill Cameron's family, as they come to terms with the truth that their loved one faces a prison sentence and a criminal record that'll stay with him for the rest of his life. He said, "These are the consequences that young men, fueled by misguided ideas about loyalty and disrespect, who arm themselves with knives that look like weapons in a movie, never stop to think about. A mindless but brutally violent encounter between feuding groups that lasts just seconds can have an impact that lasts a lifetime. Sadly, they are the same circumstances we've seen play out across London far too many times before, which is why the Met continues to make tackling violent crime its top priority. We're clamping down on known offenders, taking weapons off the street, and focusing resources on hotspots of violence where they're needed most. When the worst does happen and lives are taken through violence, we're making use of every resource we have to identify those responsible and bring them to justice." It's absolutely true that the Met Police are doing all they can to track and bring down these gangs, therefore reducing gun violence. However, the issue seems to be going off the rails, and tensions between the Met Police and their designated communities, especially Tottenham in London, increases. London is known to be the worst city for teenagers, as it's even on track to recording the worst year of teenage murders. It's clearly accepted that gang members have no regard for human life, as the general public do, and this has somehow impaired the stereotyping that goes in identifying gang members. So far, 27 teenagers have died in London since 2021, and the youngest victim was a 14-year-old boy who was savagely killed with a sword. In some areas, gang violence is at a record high, and in London alone there are over 200 identified gangs where members are ranked on the level of their violent nature, especially by the Met Police. While the list is well secured within the force, out of the 20 most dangerous gangs in London, a record of 7 are based inside and around Tottenham. This statistic only gives a wild guess that gangs live on each other's doorsteps, which naturally raises tension amongst the community. Also, because of this proximity, the people of the community and the Metropolitan Police are divided and hold reservations against each other. The Metropolitan Police describe a gang as a group of street-based young people who engage in a range of criminal activity and violence, who may have all or some of these features, including laying claim or identifying a territory, structural feature, and are constantly in conflict with similar gangs. In essence, gangs in the UK are formed on familial bonds over a place, and this goes a long way to explain the conflict that has taken the lives of so many teenagers in the capital. For example, Tottenham and Haringey are associated with several high-profile gangs that border each other. So many teenagers narrowly miss out on their big dreams and fall into the street life, and those that are lucky somehow have plain evidence of this lifestyle, including scars all over their bodies, concealed as well as visible. Noting the way many gangs work, they apparently give their victims no options, especially the innocent ones at the time when there's bad blood. This is a quote from a former gang member trying to find his way out of that life. It's dangerous for you to walk about freely in Tottenham. Let's just put it like this. I could be walking around here late at night, and if certain gang members are out to do stuff to each other on that particular day, and they happen to bump into me, they're not particularly asking no questions because the younger generation today, they don't care about who you are. If their brethren had died and they're coming back to get revenge, it doesn't matter who you are, you're here in it. That's it. You're gonna get it. You should think that the police are always easily reached when these are carried out, but it's noted that in these areas the tensions between the police and members of the community do not allow people to call the police at once. Calling the police is not the thing to do. There are numerous reasons for the tension between the police and community members in Tottenham, which has been simmering for years, but really broke down in the 1980s. In 1985, Cynthia Jarrett, a 49-year-old black woman, died from a heart failure after police entered her flat in the Broadwater Farm estate. This led to a mass riot the day after her death, in which PC Keith Blakelock, a riot officer working there, died after being stabbed 40 times by at least 2 knives and a machete. 26 years later, in 2011, a local man was shot and killed by a police officer during an operation. His name was Mark Duggan. Both incidents have somehow affected policing in the area ever since, where the public's trust isn't favourable for the officers. One report suggested that police on patrol are always not welcome in the area, and the reception they get from the wider community is as terrible as the violence going on in the area. It's therefore difficult not to accept the huge gulf between the police and the local community, which begs answers to the question of whether more policing can do more to fill up what is already caved in. One police officer mentioned, "A lot of people here don't want to speak to us. A lot of the gang members don't want to speak to us, or even the older community members don't speak to us because maybe they feel the police are racist, or we don't do things correctly, or we do it illegally. I'll be honest, in my short time in the police, I don't feel like I've met any racist police officers. The way we work is completely against that." When asked what really gives satisfaction to them on account of a society that needs so much help but weary of the policeman's assistance, PC Dan Freeman mentioned that it's getting a knife out of someone's pocket or out of a bag. He notes, "There's no better feeling than that. They're only carrying that knife for one reason from my point of view. I'm not going to lie, right now it's the worst time to be a police officer, certainly in my career. The hostility towards police is the worst it has ever been. I've had my doubts along the way, of course, but we're here to help people. That's our job. We're here to make people safe, and I love that idea." While the police have their tales of disdain from the community, members of the community also tell of racial discrimination from these police officers, and notably, members of the community really do not trust the police. One community person said, "Who the F are the police? If you're a white person, then the Met are a police service. If you're black, then they're a police force." The community has made their feelings clear. The police were not welcome there. One other woman who has had her son killed and was present at the Broadwater Farm riot in 1985 said, "So they locked up all of us black people in there. Don't you think that was going to build a rage? And that rage was bubbling and it just exploded. I was stigmatized by the police when they kicked in my door, arrested me and took me into the station for 3 days and terrorized me for the death of a police officer I don't know about, all because I lived on Broadwater Farm." The ever-growing case of teenage death on the streets of London has called for more attention and the need to get knives out of the streets of London. Subscribe and ring the notification bell for more juicy content coming your way, and don't forget to like and share the video with your friends.